Next thing you know, my son's got it.
Yep.
Brutal.
Yeah, I'm back to the mask in some places because it's just. But I'm going to get my booster.
Morning, Karen.
Hi, he's coming.
Thanks, Karen.
Okay, so we've let the presenters in. So.
Morning, Ron.
Good morning.
Planned to take next week off, but now he wants to come in next week.
Oh.
Okay, I see it's 9 o'clock, and I'm going to call the meeting to order. And I'd like to ask, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? I see none. We'll go to public meetings. Welcome and good morning. Today there are two public meetings regarding proposed development applications in accordance with the Planning Act. I'm pleased to advise that this is being broadcast live on the Township's YouTube channel, where a recording of this meeting will be available. Notice of the meetings were sent by first-class mail to all property owners within 120 meters, which is 400 feet, of the subject properties. Signage was also posted on the respective subject properties to provide information about the applications. All of this was in conformance with the Planning Act process for a statutory public meeting. The purpose of the meetings are to inform and provide the public and the Planning and Development Committee with an opportunity to ask questions or express views with respect to the proposal. The format of each of the public meetings will be as follows. One, the applicant's agent will generally explain the purpose and effect of the application. Two, secondly, the township staff can provide further information and clarify any statements of the applicant and or their agent. Three, next, the public will be permitted to ask questions and express views on the proposal, and then the public portion of the meeting will be closed. And four, lastly, members of the committee will be given the opportunity to ask questions for clarification on the proposal and provide comments. At the conclusion of the meeting, for each application, the applicant, their agent, and if required, township staff will be given the opportunity to respond to the questions and comments received. No decision will be made today following the public meeting on the two proposed zoning bylaw amendment applications. Following this meeting, the information obtained, including from questions and comments submitted by members of the public and committee, will assist the township and applicant's team to determine next steps. Once the township is satisfied with the information provided by the applicants and their consultants, an additional public meeting may be scheduled or a report will return to this committee. The township is the approval authority for the proposed zoning bylaw amendments, for which this committee may recommend the bylaws to be considered by a council or ask for additional information prior to council's consideration. If in the future, Township Council decides in favor of the applications by adopting recommendations from this committee, members of the public who have provided oral or written submissions but disagree with the decisions may be entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal under the Planning Act. Individuals attending the public meetings by YouTube, Zoom, or telephone may email or call the Township's Planning Department to submit contact information to receive notice of the decision on the application. So now our first public meeting is for 3375 Muskoka Street Zoning Bylaw Amendment. And I'll call upon the applicant's agents, Jenna, MacKinnon, and Kathy Desjardins from Granite Engineering Services to provide information provided in item C 1.3.1 of the agenda package and explain the purpose and the effect of the application. So I'll hand it off to Granite Engineering there.
Thank you for giving us time today. We did send a presentation in. I don't know if anybody's able to put it up.
Yeah, if you could share that, that would be great.
Can I do that?
So just bear with us one moment.
Sorry, we thought you were going to do that. You just have to give us 1 second.
Well, I can ask Allison what she would recommend.
It's entirely up to you. Give me one moment and I can have your presentation.
Okay,
Sorry about that.
thank you.
Ooh. P6. There we go. Can council see that?
I can't. There we go. Yep.
Okay,
Yes, I can.
perfect.
Okay.
So-
Back to Granite there. That'd be good.
Great, thank you. So today we're talking about the zoning amendment for 3375 Muskoka Street in Washago. You can see where it's located at the corner of Hamilton Street and Muskoka Street, highlighted in the red. If you can turn the page, Allison. Thank you. So just so you know, that is, again, 3375 in Washago. We're in the township of Severn, county of Simcoe, of course. The rest is just the legal address. If you can change the page again. This property is zoned downtown commercial zone 2, and this is the home of the Washago Home Hardware. The lot frontage on the property is 55.5 meters with a depth of 77.3 meters, and it's located at the corner of Hamilton and Muskoka Streets as shown in the first diagram. Next page. This is just a overlay of what the buildings on the property are. There are actually 4 existing buildings. 3 of them consist of the store, the retail store for the home hardware. They're all connected. There's a separate garden tool storage building. You can see there at the bottom. The proposed building is there in the bottom right-hand corner. That would be for storage. Okay, next page. So this is really just telling you the main building. Building number 1 has a main entrance into the store. Building number 2 was an addition to the store and is part of the main retail store. The same with building number 3. Building number 4 is a separate steel-clad building, and it is just utilized for garden and tool storage. There is some small amount of sales that go out of that area as well. Next page is just photos of the store. So you can see the main entrance, the storage building that we were talking about for the garden equipment. The bottom left is, excuse me, the rear of the building. And the bottom right is a bunch of pallets are there now, but that's where the location of the proposed storage building will be, at the rear of the building. Next page. The proposed development is an addition of a 2-story building, a total of 1,280 square feet, to be located in the southeast side of the subject property. The development is a 2-story building to be utilized for storage for the home hardware retail store. There will be no retail activities happening out of that building. Next page. So with respect to zoning compliance, the proposed development will comply with the township zoning bylaw with respect to setbacks and lot coverage. The reason we're asking for the zoning bylaw amendment today is for height. The owner of the Washago requires additional storage for supplies and products. The amount of storage requires a 2nd floor to the storage building, causing an increase in the maximum allowable height to 9.3 meters. The maximum allowed for the township is 5 meters, so the relief we're asking for is 4.3 meters. The next page. This is a Google Maps view. You can clearly see front of the store is at a higher elevation than the rear of the store. So the increase in height will not impact what it looks like from the roadside. And if you go to the next page, these are buildings for the Timber Mart whose property runs behind the Home Hardware. And they also have buildings that are slightly above. Ours would still be a little bit higher, but theirs is above the minimum as well, or the maximum as well. So it wouldn't, and there's no residential back there, so it wouldn't affect it in that way whatsoever. So that's really the end of our presentation today. Again, we're asking for increased height for the storage for the Home Hardware. It's a busy store, and that's about it.
Thank you very much. I'll hand it over to staff here. Does the township's planner, Emily Keel, have anything further to add to the materials and information provided by the applicant?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. So I will share my screen just to pull up the site plan again. I do apologize. I do have two screens open. So if you see me looking away, that's what's going on. Okay, so can everyone see the site plan open on the screen now?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So thank you.
Yeah, we can't hear you right now, Emily.
To Jenna and Kathy for potentially, if I stop sharing, that might work better.
Is there someone here at the office that can share this, Emily?
Potentially, Brad or Andrea might be able to pull it up.
I can bring it up. Just one second.
Brad. Awesome. Thank you, Brad. So I'll just expand on a couple notes as included and outlined in the staff report. I do apologize. They seem to have an unstable internet connection. So please let me know if anything cuts out or if you have any questions. So overall, from a policy perspective, the proposed accessory use building, being the storage building, does appear to be in conformity with the provincial, county, and township policy documents. As noted, the subject property is located within the fully serviced settlement area of Washago and is within the township settlement employment designation with that downtown commercial zoning. So the general direction of the applicable documents, including the PPS growth plan, the county official plan, the township official plan, does encourage the municipality to account for the future needs of our downtown core businesses while encouraging a more efficient use of the lands. So currently the lands do appear to have an excessive amount of outdoor storage, confirmed through a site visit completed by staff. Some of this does appear to be located on township property. However, through the construction of this accessory use storage building, it is anticipated that this issue would resolve and have an overall positive impact on the subject property, improving the aesthetics and navigability of the subject lands. For this application, it's not necessarily the use of the structure that's the question. It's more of the height and the stories, as noted by Jenna and Kathy previously. So as committee might be familiar, the township zoning bylaw does restrict accessory structures to a maximum height of 5 meters containing a single story. However, in application, this is generally more relevant or applicable to residential zones. The structure is not necessarily anticipated to appear out of place or a dominant feature on the lands, and it is intended to support the ongoing business on the property. As noted as well by Kathy and Jenna, the adjacent Timber Mart commercially zoned property does appear to have similar accessory structures on the lot. So it wouldn't stand out and it would complement the uses on the adjacent properties really well. I will just note that Section 4 of the Township Zoning Bylaw does speak to the number of required parking spaces associated with various uses and the structures and their size. So through this section and the proposal, the zoning bylaw would require that a minimum of 3 new additional parking spaces be created. However, the applicants do indicate that there are some proposed parking on the site plan. During a site visit completed by staff, it was noted that this area is currently already being used for that. So those spaces wouldn't necessarily be considered new parking. This is not really uncommon for downtown core commercial areas to have non-complying parking requirements. The subject property is already non-complying in terms of the number of required parking spaces. So there's a couple options outlined in the staff report that committee could consider today. So the Planning Act and the Township Official Plan do include policy to allow for committee to consider a cash in lieu payment associated with a parking agreement. So where the parking can be reasonably accommodated off-site. So this would just be a cash in lieu payment for the number of required parking spaces. This is something that would be facilitated should the application reach site plan control stage. It would be completed in concert at that time. It is noted by the Public Works Department that there does appear to be additional opportunity for public parking to be expanded in this area of the township, namely on Hamilton Street, directly adjacent to the Washago Home Hardware store. So it does generally seem that this situation could be rectified through the parking agreement route. However, alternatively, committee could request that additional parking studies be submitted with the application and potentially consider a reduced parking request through the zoning bylaw amendment. Based on other examples in nearby municipalities, however, the parking agreement would satisfy that requirement and wouldn't necessarily need to be detailed in the site-specific zoning. So those are kind of the two options presented by staff through the staff report for committee's consideration. Again, the lands would be subject to site plan control. So as with other commercial site plan applications, additional considerations or mitigative measures to prevent potential impacts on neighboring properties would be more examined comprehensively at that time. So that includes stormwater management, landscaping, signage, accessibility, that parking agreement. The township clerk also provided a comment indicating that there could be an encroachment issue on the property right now. But if this is deemed to be the case, that is also something that would be addressed during the site plan agreement through an encroachment agreement. Kind of similar to the potential parking agreement for committee's consideration. Overall, those are the two different options that staff would recommend that committee consider this morning. I don't have anything further to add at this time. However, staff are available should committee or anyone else have any additional questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Emily. I'll open it up to the public. Any persons present on Zoom or on the telephone who have either questions or comments on the application will now be invited to speak. Please unmute yourself when recognized and turn on your camera if you wish. You will be required to give your full name and address for the minutes. Please note that your comments will also be recorded and live streamed to the township's YouTube channel and will remain online. The township does not have the ability to edit the live stream to remove any personal information provided in the course of submitting comments or questions. So if there's any members of the public who would like to speak, please unmute yourself now and give your name and address for the minutes. So we'll wait for a few minutes here. Do we have anyone in queue, Allison, that you know?
Not that I'm aware of, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, this is Kathy from Granite Engineering. I was just wondering if I could say something.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a chance after this section here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that being the case, then I'll ask if Granite Engineering would like to speak.
Yeah, hi. The only thing I would like to maybe comment on are options 1 and 2. With option 2 going back for another planning justification report and a parking study, I would ask that option 1 be thoroughly looked at and possibly done. Option 2, I don't see a lot of benefits to that, especially to our client. I see increased costs to a client. We're coming into a bit of a recession here, and money's going to end up being tight. And to ask our client to do a parking study and another justification brief, could be a substantial amount of money. Option 1, where we go into a agreement with respect to parking, absolutely, that's plausible. There's also comments from the Public Works about some of the stock being held along Hamilton Street that can be removed, and it would be removed and put in that storage building, allowing additional parking there. Not sure that we can do this through the site plan process with the planning department. Not sure that we can actually say here's more parking, because it's technically not his property, it's the town's property. Don't know that we could show it there on a site plan, but that we could ensure that that area be cleared off and allowed for parking, which actually is used a lot for parking right now. There is still sufficient space, even with their some of their stock being there. So I just would like to maybe encourage option 1 to be chosen for financial gain, with respect to financial situations, with what it would cost to do option 2 for our client. And to what gain, I'm not really sure. It's not gonna, the amount of property or the amount of parking we can get on his property is what it is and can't really be changed. The parking is what the parking's always been. This building's been there for a long time. The retail store has been there for a long time. And to my knowledge, there's been no negative effects to parking or traffic in that area. I don't see that would change. So I just ask that option 1 be looked at and considered.
Well, thank you for your comments, Sarah. In that case, I'll open up for the committee for any comments that the committee members have. Member Dunlop and then Member Cox.
Sorry. Thank you, through the chair. I'm in favor of this request, and I would also agree with option 1. We know that there's been infringements on that area with storage, and when that's taken away, I would just like to see a parking sign put at that corner of Hamilton to direct people, because it's going to be, let's just say, newfound parking that we didn't have before. And I think it's great that a business is growing in our area, and we need to do everything we can do to help move this forward. My only concern on the whole thing is through fire. Does the fire chief have any problem with the height of that building?
I'm not sure.
Emily, could you answer that?
Yes, go ahead, Emily.
Thank you, through the chair, to Member Dunlop. We hadn't received comments at this point in time from the fire chief or the fire department. However, they would be deeply involved in the site plan agreement process, and any fire safety considerations would be explored at that time as well.
That'd be great. So I'm done. I'm for this. I'm for option 1. Like Granite Engineering saying, we're not going to find more property, and it's a small town. And so that parking along the side will be a benefit to everyone. And I agree with this planning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Member Cox.
Yes, I totally agree too. This is a business that it needs to expand, and he's doing well. So I think we need to go to option 1, get it all figured out, and let them move on with their process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on the committee? Member Burkett.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. To Emily, I'm just curious, can we go back to that parking diagram that you had? And I just need to better understand how many more parking spots are required, and why are we asking for more parking? I know it's part of our bylaw, but it's just a storage building. It's not a building where we're going to have retail sales. All they're doing is taking, as it's been said, merchandise that's been stored on our parking area and move it into a building. And I think if you look at our diagram, can we bring it back up? There's ample parking, and how many more parking spots would be required?
Could Brad bring that back up again, and Emily can speak to the Mayor Burkett's questions there.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Member Burkett. So, yep, the zoning bylaw does require that an additional 3 parking spaces be accommodated for on the site. That is a general use associated, or general parking requirement associated with a storage building. Perhaps Katie, our senior planner, may wish to provide some more comment on that as well. We do recognize that there are some parking constraints on the site, and this area that is being proposed technically already is being used for parking, so that necessarily wouldn't accommodate for those 3 additional parking spaces that are required. So that's sort of where the parking agreement is being recommended by staff. As the site already is non-compliant for parking, this would seek to kind of resolve those issues and kind of incorporate that into the site plan control agreement. But perhaps if Katie had anything additional to add.
Is Katie online there?
I am. Thank you, Chair. Sorry, Emily and I are both at a conference and we're not having the greatest internet, so I did miss a little bit of that. However, I just wanted to reiterate, as it's kind of explained in the report, essentially when we look at an application, we have to evaluate it based on today's standards, right? So we all know this building's been here a long time. There's always been less parking than what the bylaw requires. However, just like every property we've dealt with in the township, as soon as something new comes up, we have to compare it to today's performance standards within the zoning bylaw. So it already has a deficient amount of parking. Emily and I, when we were on site, we did witness 4 vehicles parked in the area where the 4 spots are labeled on the site plan. So unfortunately, in order to construct a new building, we have to look at the additional parking requirements. As Emily mentioned, basically it's 3 additional spots. So we don't have to look at what was previously, built, previously approved before zoning, all of that kind of stuff and that parking demand, but we do have to look at the extra that's being added, especially on a small site like this, where potentially where this building's going could have accommodated additional parking. We understand they do have some storage constraints and the property is small. It's great for downtown Washago. We're supportive of all of that. So our 2 recommendation options there were really, one, to say you could have, applied for a parking exemption as part of the zoning bylaw amendment, or option 2, our official plan actually recognizes this kind of situation and allows the owners to enter into a parking agreement with council. We haven't, to my knowledge, done one at the township before, but it basically allows for this exact situation where it is a downtown property. There's not enough parking, and it recognizes that parking may be accommodated on the street or on an off-site location, such as a municipal lot or something like that. So this parking agreement, which would have to be brought back to council in the future because it's not something that's in our delegations bylaw, basically it would outline that they were agreeing, usually there's a monetary compensation. Through our research, it greatly varies from township to township what that monetary compensation is for the parking agreement. But it basically just acknowledges that there is deficient parking on the site. And then through that agreement and through the site plan process as well, we would work with the Public Works Department, as Member Dunlop also mentioned, to have that parking on Hamilton Street formally recognized as municipal parking. So it would be available for everyone, not just for those at Home Hardware. So it's just something we had to look at through this bylaw. We weren't by any means, suggesting that the application shouldn't be approved. It's just that there's those 2 options just because of the way our zoning bylaw and official plan is set out.
Okay, thanks, Katie. Back to Member Burkett.
Thank you through the chair, and thank you, Katie, for that explanation. But my concern is in the essence of time, and now we're asking this business that we have in Washago, and I'm looking at that diagram and the way the parking is configured, and what I struggle with is is the additional parking, like there'd have to be some rationale as to why we need additional parking. And I understand it's in our bylaw whenever someone builds a building, but for our sake, all he's doing is building a storage building. There is ample parking, and I think his employees are parking in that section. If we angle the parking, is there going to be enough room to put 3 more cars there? Or to your comment, we could do a parking exemption. I'm not sure what you called it when we've never done one before. And how long would that take? And what would be involved to do something like that for the homeowner? Because I'm not in favor of option 2. I'm in favor of option 1. Just curious if you could explain that to me, Katie, please.
Yeah, go ahead, Katie. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair Taylor, through to Member Burkett's question. We don't believe any additional time would be required. They do have to go through the site plan process, the site plan agreement process. So as council's aware, that does take some time, and that parking agreement can run in tandem with that process. As council's aware, the site plan agreement is now delegated to staff after the province mandated that be the case. So council wouldn't see that site plan agreement come before them, but the parking agreement would. So there wouldn't be any additional time associated with that. And that's exactly what the official plan policy that we're referencing here, that ability to say, we understand you don't need, you can't accommodate more parking on your site, and that's why you can do this off-site parking agreement. So that's 100% what we're trying to recognize here, is that there's not going to be more parking accommodated on the site. The bylaw, of course, says, you need more parking. So this exemption allows them to do that without including that within their rezoning ask.
Supplementary through the chair, if I may, to Katie. So how do we arrive at a figure, because it said monetary value in lieu of parking? How do we arrive at a figure?
Through Member Taylor, if I could, back to Member Burkett, Chair Taylor. Very interesting question. We obviously haven't done one at the township before, so there is no precedent here that we could find, at least. Certainly not in my time have we done one. We looked at a few different examples as we were writing this report. However, it was just getting a little bit off topic for that, since we need to come back to council for that anyway. Some places, such as the township of Muskoka Lakes, charge $1. And other places charge a lot more than $1. So, I mean, that's going to be up to council when we come back with that. We're hoping through this process, we can survey some other municipalities and get a feel for what they do. Some of them also have timelines associated with the agreement. So we're just going to have to do a little bit of research on the staff end to see what's common in other municipalities. And then we'll bring that forward to council at that time and see where council wants to direct us.
Supplementing through the chair.
I'll let Member Burkett and then Member Dunlop.
Thank you. To Katie. Katie, we all struggled to provide economic development to our villages, and I'm in favor of charging $1. I don't know how others feel. I don't want to penalize the man that does so much for Washago and enhances our community. I'd love to hear what other members of council have to say.
Thank you, Member Dunlop. And then Member Cox.
So through the chair to Katie, I agree with Member Burkett. If we are trying to promote businesses in our area and we're going to make him sign an agreement for monetary, where does that money go? Where would we put it? We can't provide more land with it. I don't know what we can do with it. And I would be in favor of saying, let's give it $1 and start from there. This is not fair to be charging money that we have no place to put it. Maybe enough to provide that parking sign directing that there's going to be more parking. Thank you.
I'll let Katie speak to that, and then Member Cox.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. I just wanted to note for everyone, I don't know if everyone else's Zoom does that. When I put up my physical hand, my digital hand also appeared. So that was an interesting experience. Anyway, that is, so sorry, through Chair Taylor to Member Dunlop, that is actually the intent. So this is something right in the Provincial Planning Act, that it's basically, instead of cash in lieu of parkland, which council's familiar with, it's cash in lieu of parking. right? So that's right in the provincial act. And that is, to Member Dunlap's point, that's exactly what this fee or this account would be used for, right? So if the township was going to physically make a new parking lot, and we had a lot of applications where we took this kind of money, then we would use that money to make a new parking lot. So just exactly the situation you just mentioned, if we're going to make some infrastructure changes along Hamilton Street there, then perhaps this parking agreement would pay for those infrastructure changes. So in speaking to the Public Works Department, it may simply be some of those cement, I forget what they're called, but the things that delineate parking spots, and then a parking sign, right? So we may say, okay, the cost to the township is X dollars, and therefore, Home Hardware is going to pay for that. Or council might decide that they're not going to pay for that, and council overall is just going to pay for those parking improvements. So that is what the funds are supposed to go towards.
Perfect. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you. Member Cox.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Member Burkett said too. And I only have through the chair to Emily, I guess. Where after this goes, and I know sort of how long things take to get there, but I know that we have a backlog. So I am just wondering how long this process would be. Any idea of a timeline to when we would get back to Mr. Harmon on this?
Yeah, go ahead, Katie or Emily, if you can answer that. Emily, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, through to Member Cox. So following this meeting, the draft bylaw would be brought forward at the next council meeting. Should it be adopted, the applicants, once the appeal period is over, are able to go forward with their site plan agreement application. So that would kind of go in tandem with that parking agreement, which would be brought forward to council, of course. So it's hard for us to provide an estimate. It all kind of depends on what the time that the application is provided, if it's complete, and if any additional information is required for that process. It just kind of depends on the information that's received.
Okay,
just supplemental. Yeah,
sure.
Through the chair. So the site plan can go ahead and you can be working on that, and then the parking things will come back to council and everything will just go along that way. I know you said in tandem, but the site plan can still be going along by the time you get that back to council, because we all know that things get clogged, and I just wanted to sort of clarify it for anyone who's listening. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Member McIntyre has a comment.
Emily has a hand up.
You go ahead, Emily, first, and then Member McIntyre.
Thank you, Chair. Through to Member Cox. Yes, that's correct. The site plan would still be under review, being circulated through the applicable departments while that parking agreement is going on. They would kind of be done together.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Emily. And over to you, Member McIntyre.
Thank you, Chair. My comment's simple. Ward 5 has a number of interesting buildings and property owners and business. This one's integral to our town. I'm all four square in favor of the building being approved. As far as the details of the parking and other things that I'm hearing that it'll all fall into place, I'm kind of hoping that happens, but 100% I'm in favor of Mr. Harmon's application. We desperately need to keep that thriving business going, and it's commerce. We need to have it. I just wanted it to be known that I'm in favor of it all the way.
Okay, thank you, Member McIntyre. So if there's no further comments, sure. If Andrea could speak first, and then Member Burkett.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. I just wanted to give the committee assurances that we will report back in more detail on the cash in lieu of parking matter. As Ms. Mandeville noted, it is a new matter for the township, although it's in our official plan. We haven't utilized this before. So we'll come back to you with options, comparables, site-specific considerations in consultation with the Clerk's Department and Public Works as it pertains to this particular site and the situation in Washago, so that you have the options before you to make your final determination. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. And then Member Burkett.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Further to Member Cox's comments, so just so I can understand in my head how the site plan works, and I know it hinges on his consultant getting back to us, process now where it stands? Is there a 20-day appeal period that we have to wait because of any comments that were made by the public? Just a timeline as to, or how, actually not a timeline, what needs to happen now as we move forward for Mr. Harmer?
Now, if Emily could speak to that.
Thank you, Chair, through to Member Burkett. Yep, so following this meeting, depending on how committee votes, the draft bylaw would be brought forward at the next meeting of council for consideration and adoption. Following that, there is the appeal period. Once that expires, then that new site-specific zoning would be in place. So the applicant at that time or prior to could start submitting the information for their site plan agreement application. Once that's sort of underway, the appropriate information would be circulated to either the township's consultants, peer reviewers, applicable departments, and that would kind of initiate the first review of that site plan. Comments are typically provided back to the applicant for response, and that's typically how that process would go. But again, just to reiterate, the parking agreement would also be brought back forward to council while that is going on. So it's not like one would need to be completed before the other, they would be completed together.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think if there's no other comments, I think the committee wants to perhaps go. Allison could read option 1, would be great.
Okie doke. So the motion then reads that planning report number P22-034 dated September 21st, 2022 with respect to the zoning bylaw amendment application, file number Z2206 for the subject lands located at 3375 Muskoka Street be received, and that a draft zoning bylaw amendment be presented to council for consideration at the next available meeting, subject to comments received prior to council's consideration of the zoning bylaw amendment, including additional submissions from the Planning and Development Committee, members of the public, circulated agencies, and township departments. And further, that township staff prepare a parking agreement for council's future consideration after the submission of an application for a site plan agreement.
Okay, we have a mover there. Moved by Member Dunlop, seconded by Member McIntyre. All in favor? And I think that's everybody. Great.
Perfect.
Thank you. So I think we'll keep going. We'll go to the our second meeting today for 8120 Highway 11 South zoning bylaw amendment. I'll call upon the applicant's agent, Karla Tamayo from Innovative Planning Solutions to please present the information provided within agenda item C 2.3.1 of the agenda package and explain the purpose and effect of the application. Good morning, Karla.
Good morning, Chair Taylor. Give me 1 second to share my screen here.
Okay, thank you.
Can everyone see that all right?
Yep, I think that's good.
Perfect. So good morning, Planning Committee, staff, and members of the public. My name is Karla Tamayo. I'm a planner with Innovative Planning Solutions, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant 2712884 Ontario Inc. as it relates to the proposal at 8120 Highway 11 South. So the subject site is highlighted in red on this image and is located along Highway 11 South, just 200 meters north of the intersection of Highway 11 South and Big Chief Road. The total area of the site is approximately 3.6 hectares or 9 acres. The site has frontage along both Highway 11 South and Division Road East, with approximately 84 meters of frontage along Division Road East and approximately 42 meters onto Highway 11 South. There are existing uses on site, including Retire Your Tire, which is a used tire collection business, a motor vehicle repair garage, a single detached dwelling, including an accessory office for Retire Your Tire that's located within that dwelling. This slide provides images of the site as it exists today. Starting with the image in the top left, this is showing the motor vehicle repair garage on site. The top center image shows the outdoor storage of tires, which is typically held in these trailers. The image in the top right shows the existing single detached dwelling on site. And in the bottom image, you can see some of the tire sorting, loading, and trucking activities that occur on site in relation to the Retire Your Tire business. So I want to spend a little time here to speak specifically to Retire Your Tire. So Retire Your Tire is a business that's registered and regulated under the Resource Productivity and Recovery Authority, or the RPRA. And the mandate of the RPRA is to enforce Ontario's circular economy laws. So through Ontario's circular economy laws, and more specifically under Ontario Regulation 225/18, Retire Your Tire is defined as a tire hauler or a person who transports tires in Ontario to a site for processing, reuse, retreading, or disposal. Now, tire haulers play an integral role in Ontario's circular economy, and yet the nature of this use is not typically defined nor specifically considered within municipal zoning bylaws. And this is part of the reason why we're before you here today. Is one of the main goals is to ensure that this use can be accommodated for within the township and in a manner that's in alignment to the township's goals and objectives for compatible and appropriate land use planning and development. So with this, I'll bring the attention back to the subject site and the development we're presenting to you today. So the site's currently designated settlement employment area within the township's official plan. And the lands are currently zoned highway commercial within the township zoning bylaw. To facilitate the proposal, the applicant's requesting a zoning bylaw amendment to rezone the subject lands from highway commercial to highway commercial exception 17 with a holding 42. So the special provisions requested as part of the proposal are listed here, and that being that a material recovery facility with outdoor storage and an accessory office be permitted on site. And it was through consultation with township staff that it was determined that Retire Your Tire should be defined within the zoning bylaw as a material recovery facility. Another special provision requested would be that any material recovery facility on the subject land should be limited to and therefore not exceed 5,000 PTEs, that's passenger tire equivalents, and or 300 cubic meters of tires. And this limit of 500 PTEs and or 300 cubic meters of tires was determined in consultation with the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, as well as township staff. Special provisions also requested to legalize the existing deficient frontage of 40 meters along Highway 11 South. So that's an existing condition of the site that we're just looking to legalize through the zoning bylaw amendment. And lastly, a holding provision has been requested by township staff, providing that a site plan agreement would be required prior to any development or site alteration here. So this is the proposed site plan layout. For orientation, we have Highway 11 to the right of the screen and then Division Road East to the left. The orange block denotes the existing single detached dwelling on site. The purple block denotes the location of the existing steel vehicle repair shop. The existing outdoor storage area is outlined in that hatched gray, and then access driveways and parking are shown in that darker gray. And I want to emphasize here that the proposal to permit Retire Your Tire does not seek to change any of the details as they're demonstrated on this plan. So Retire Your Tire will make use of the existing outdoor gravel storage area and does not seek to expand upon it. And additionally, no new buildings or structures are proposed through this application. A number of studies were completed as part of our application and submitted to the township for review, and these studies are listed here. So they included a planning justification report, a stormwater management report, an environmental impact study, a traffic impact study, a noise vibration study or land use compatibility study, a functional servicing study, hydrogeological study, phase 1 environmental site assessment, a topographic survey, a preliminary lot grading plan, and preliminary stormwater management plan, and an interim erosion and sediment control plan, which was implemented around this time last year. So in conclusion, the proposed zoning bylaw amendment appropriately directs employment growth to a settlement area on lands that are designated first settlement employment area within the official plan. The proposal will permit a material recovery facility on the subject lands, thereby supporting provincial and county directives for waste management, and particularly reduce, reuse, and recycle objectives. The proposal promotes economic development and competitiveness, with the intent being to ensure long-term compatibility with the surrounding sensitive uses, including the neighboring residential uses. And should the application be approved, a subsequent site plan application will be made for site plan control to implement the recommended development controls, which would include, but is not limited to, a tree preservation plan, a landscaping plan, a detailed grading and stormwater management plans, a lighting plan, and a fugitive dust plan. And so through our review, it is our opinion that the application is consistent with and conforms to provincial, county, and township planning policies. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Karla. Then I'll ask, does the township planner, Brad Oster, have any further to add to the materials information presented by the applicant? Brad, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Taylor. So Ms. Tamayo has provided a detailed review of the purpose and effect of the application, so I won't repeat matters that have already been discussed. But just as some background to the application, staff did become aware of uses occurring on the site as part of a bylaw investigation. And upon review, it was noted that the permitted motor vehicle repair uses had evolved over the years to now include the storage and transfer of tires. So the zoning bylaw amendment that is before the committee this morning does seek to clarify that a materials recovery facility is a permitted use on the lands, and implement those capacity restrictions on the amount of tires allowed to be stored on site in accordance with the Environmental Protections Act, and to recognize the frontage of the subject lands. Planning staff have also recommended that a holding provision be applied to require a site plan agreement prior to any further site alteration or development occurring on the lands. At this point in time, there have been a number of professional reports and studies that were submitted in support of the application, which are currently being peer reviewed by the township's professional consultants at the applicant's expense. So staff are requesting that the peer reviewers provide their formal comments following today's public meeting, so that any comments that are provided before or at the public meeting can be taken into consideration by the peer reviewers. So these submission materials and peer reviews evaluate many aspects and policies, including but not limited to the compatibility of the use with adjacent land uses, stormwater management, servicing, traffic, and environmental. So for those reasons, staff are recommending that until such time that the peer reviews are completed and the peer reviewers are satisfied with the submissions, and any comments that have been provided are addressed, planning staff cannot evaluate the application for conformity with the applicable planning policy documents or make a recommendation to the committee with respect to this application. Staff have visited the lands multiple times over the last year or so, and we do have some concerns related to activities that may be occurring on site beyond the scope of the current C4 highway commercial zone that's applied to the property, or the amendment that's requested through the site-specific zoning. So staff are currently working with the applicant regarding these matters to clarify whether these uses are permanent uses or whether they are temporary uses aimed to clean up the lands. So for absolute clarity, we do wish just to remind members of the public that no decision is being made today with respect to this application, and that this public meeting is to gather comments and questions from members of the public and the committee to be considered by the applicant, the peer reviewers, and staff. And that's all I have, but if the committee has any questions, staff are available. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Brad. So now I'll open up to the public. Any persons present on Zoom or on the telephone who have either questions or comments on the application will now be invited to speak. Please unmute yourself when recognized and turn on your camera if you wish. You will be required to give your full name and address for the minutes. Please note that your comments will also be recorded and live streamed to the township's YouTube channel and will remain online. The township doesn't have any ability to edit the live stream to remove any personal information provided in the course submitting comments or questions. If there are any members of the public who would like to speak, please unmute yourself now and give your name and address for the minutes. So Allison, do we have, I think there may be at least one person on.
There are a few folks that are here.
Okay.
And I just think we need to give them a second to unmute themselves if they'd like to talk.
Hi, I'm Laura Kitchen. Am I able to speak?
Yes, yes, go ahead.
Okay. So I'm Laura Kitchen. I live at 1664 Division Road East in Severn Township. So I'm going to lose my voice, but I did submit this as well. I'm very passionate about this. Sorry, I know I'm going to lose my voice. So I've resided here since 1999 on Division Road East. I've enjoyed the peace. Sorry, I don't know if I'll be able to speak because it's. Okay. I find it very upsetting.
Okay, we're here to listen to you anyway, Laura.
Maybe if somebody can speak before me, just.
Yeah, how about let's go to a second person, then we'll come back to you for sure.
Okay.
Thanks.
Hello.
Yeah,
Hi.
go ahead, Christine.
Hi.
Go ahead. If you could say your name and address for the record.
My name is Christine Caesar. I'm speaking on behalf of my sister, Carolyn Ann Parr, and she lives at 8084 Highway 11 South. She is actually directly beside this property that's under review. So
Okay.
she just got called into work, so she asked me if I could do this meeting for her. So because she's directly beside this property on two sides, they have actually extended, I guess, the property in behind her house and on the east side of her house. So she says the property is never maintained. There's so much dust and stuff that they get in their house that you can't even eat outside to have a barbecue. There's no dust control at all. There are two adjoining properties to this particular property, which is 8092 and 8098. And they, even though it's not part of the 8120, they still use those two lots. There is an open well on that lot that they have vehicles parked over. I think it's a dry well, and there's just a piece of metal over the well, but they don't just use 8120, they also use these two properties. They've put up a fence with barbed wire at the top. And she also said that there's lots of vermin and stuff on this property, like lots of raccoons and stuff. And the dust was a big one. And I guess she was wondering, is the storage facility that's going to be built, is that in lieu of all the trailers that are on the property that contain all the tires? So once the building is built, will all these tractors that are parked on the property still be on the property, or is this going to clean up the property substantially? And also she was concerned because is this going to be a transfer station, or how often are the tires removed from the property? Is there going to be some fire system put in place in case the facility starts on fire? MOE approvals, I would imagine that is the 5,000 tire limit for the property is due to them, I would imagine. And how big is the facility going to be? Are there going to be alarms on the property? Is the building going to be really close to her property? So they already lose, like they have great loss of enjoyment of their property because of this property, because nobody maintains it. And there's also a concern with the entrance off the highway, that the asphalt doesn't actually go right over to the shoulder. It's a gravel side to the road. So it's really hard for them now that this fence and this property has been expanded to even pull into their own property safely. Because these tractors and stuff block the entrance to their driveway. And security, is there going to be any security on the property? Let me see, what else is there that she has here? And a lot of the vehicles on the property right now are not even roadworthy. I think that's, and she wondered how many businesses were actually on the property at this time. And I think that's all that she had.
I think those are excellent questions, and hopefully Allison's captured those. Some concerning things about the adjoining properties sticks out, and I'm sure the committee will have some comments as well. So those are excellent questions, and we look forward to having them presented, and then to give staff and the applicant a chance to answer those.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone else would like to make a comment, please? Laura, would you like to try that again?
I'm going to try
Yeah,
again.
that's
I'm
great.
going to condense what I'm going to say, but I did email it what I wanted to say to the planning committee this morning because I knew this would happen.
Okay, that's good.
So my concern, so I know that there are tires there already, which apparently maybe hasn't been permitted to do. So my concern that the expansion of storing 5,000 tires on a property which directly affects my property and those around me. Discarded old tires contain chemicals and heavy metals would break down into the environment. I have maps that and again, I submitted it this morning, but I have maps that show that that property and all the properties around sit on highly vulnerable aquifer. Behind my property is environmentally protected land and water. And the ditch that all the, after the clear cutting of the mature forest and all the loads of excess gravel and dirt they added washed down directly into the ditch. The ditch actually goes directly into environmentally protected water, which goes directly into Lake Couchiching. So that was a major concern for me. And we don't have municipal water. Everybody in our surrounding area rely on our wells. So I did, again, I submitted this and it has the maps and I got them from the simco.ca website and it shows the aquifers, and it also shows that the property that the 8120 property also sits on a significant groundwater recharge area, as well as the highly vulnerable aquifer. And so again, I've submitted that. The noise created by the heavy machinery, there's constant loud banging, dust. When I'm at home during the week, I have to close my doors and windows because it's just incessant noise. So they have existing tires. If that's increased to 5,000, that noise level will just be compounded. I know my neighbors, they are directly below, and the amount of dust and the dust we get from the trucks and the moving of the tires and the noise, it's very excessive, and you can't sit outside and enjoy your property. And I've been here since 1999, and that's never been an issue until this company has moved in. And again, with the cutting of the mature forest that they did, there's no buffer, there's no noise buffer, there's no dust buffer, the particulates just come down. And if the increase in traffic to get the tire transfers is just going to compound the dust and the noise. And again, I have a lot more to say on that, but I'm just going to condense. Tire fires are notorious for being extremely difficult to suppress and release noxious chemicals into the air and water. There was a great example that, again, I've documented. The Minto, New Brunswick tire fire in 2019 was a major environmental event. I know that with different storage, they're able to mitigate the actual fires. However, once a fire is started, they're very hard to put out. And I don't know what fire suppression that they have up there or what the Simcoe County has in effect to be able to mitigate those fires. But the study showed from the Minto tire fire that petroleum hydrocarbons, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, metals, furans, there was major pollutants. Again, it's all listed. When the fire was put out, the water, everything went into the groundwater as well. And again, any of those chemicals would leach into the property, and the ditches go directly into Lake Couchiching through the environmentally protected riverway. So they have the groundwater and leaching into the ground. And I reviewed the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. I've also the Ontario Government Initiative Plan and the Severn Township policies. And they all support that natural areas support biodiversity, provide drinking water, for inhabitants, recreational activities, and quality of life is very important. Economic growth is very important. However, there are other businesses in the area, and they support the recreational use for our area, and there are no issues. However, 5,000 tires does not support the residential, rural, agricultural land surrounding that property, and that's all from the zoning. I know I looked at the zoning maps and they do show other C4 zonings, but they have been converted to residential. So, so again, it's not a highly industrialized area. And I don't think that 5,000 tires, they've already clear cutted a mature forest. It conflicts directly with the Golden Horseshoe Plan, the Simcoe County initiatives, and the Severn Township policy. And sorry, and I don't know if I can speak anymore, but that's,
no, go ahead.
A lot of concerns.
I'm just going to ask, Allison, have you received the email from Laura? And then hopefully that can be put on the record that committee can have a look at that, so we can look at that before the next meeting there.
Perfect. And I just submitted it.
If Mrs. Kitchen could submit it to myself, that would be great. I have not received that correspondence with the maps. So if she could send that along to me, that would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, Laura, I didn't want to cut you off, but if you want to continue, that would be great.
No, I think I'm good. I'll submit this to Allison, and I just did it directly to the planning email site, but I'll forward it. And I think that's all I have to say for now. Am I able to submit further after this if I find more information?
If Allison can answer that question.
Yes, you're welcome to submit more questions or information.
Okay, thank you very much.
And for your record,
thank you for your time.
Yeah, everything that goes to Allison committee, will have a look at that.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay, if anyone else in the public would like to comment. Okay, I think
I have one raised hand. I'm trying to figure out who it is. Oh,
okay,
it's Mrs. Moore.
Sherry Moore.
Mrs. Moore, do you want to unmute yourself? And
good morning. Can you hear me okay?
We can. Did you want to turn your video on?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Did you want to turn your video on?
No.
Okay, perfect.
That's fine. If you could just your name and address for the record, please, Sherry.
Sherry Moore, 1743 Division Road East. I reside just north of this property, just an actually lower elevation to this property. I just wanted to bring to awareness, I also sent in comments for this application. I echo Laura's concerns. There are historic issues on this property for me directly and my community. And I just think we need to look at this entire property as a whole, not just one business. There are multiple businesses on this property, and collectively we need to assess it and the impacts on the environment and noise and dust and drainage, to see if it's compatible. I want more information. I have read the studies. I think we still need to be asking more questions, and we need to look at this as a complete property, not just one business operation. My understanding, as I think it's Brad had commented, there are other businesses on this property that are non-permitted. So they're not spoke of in the planning brief presented by, it's Innovative Planning Services, I believe. What is the intent with those businesses? My other concern or question is, on the conceptual plan, it doesn't identify everyone independently on that property. It doesn't clearly, although this morning what I'm hearing is the entire gravel area is the intent to be this tire operation. That hasn't been the case thus far. So therefore they're going to expand beyond what they're currently using on that property. But my understanding is we have a salvage yard occurring on this property under a different business. We have a tree and log company on this property. Both of those, my understanding, are not permitted uses. We have a hobby machine shop, or sorry, not machine shop, mechanic operating on this property. So collectively, how is this affecting environmental and noise and traffic? I directly have been adversely affected by the drainage from this property. There was in 2016, 300 loads in excess of that brought onto this property to expand the usable area of this property. That was not, in my opinion, designed, monitored, and any consideration for any adjoining property for that site. So I have had adverse runoff, gravel, silt. I have lost excessive tree loss on my property because of this. So I would just like to highlight those, and I want to step back and say, we need to look at this as a full site. We need to bring in compliance for what's been done on this property and allow businesses then to continue as sees fit and in accordance with the bylaws and provincial policies and township policies. So again, I've wrote all this all out in my public comments, but I just wanted to speak to make sure everyone in the committee knew that I have submitted that, and hopefully it does get circulated and reviewed. So thank you.
Okay, I think just Sherry, did you email something to the township as well?
I emailed into planning and to Andrea Woodrow as directed on the notice.
So I'll let Andrea speak to that, please.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. Ms. Moore, I just wanted to confirm, thank you very much for your comments. We have received them and they are forming part of the official record.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else in the public like to have a comment? If not, we'll switch to staff. Could the township's planner, Brad Oster, please summarize any additional correspondence that has been submitted on this and provide any further information? I know of at least three letters that have gone in via email that we've seen there, Brad.
Yes, thank you, Chair Taylor. Since the publishing of the agenda, additional correspondence has been received from Laura Kitchen, Randy Cox, Linda Barutsky. A supplemental letter was provided from Rod Kitchen and Sherry Moore. So these correspondence note comments with respect to land use compatibility, water quality, traffic, noise, and permitted uses.
And do you have anything else to add to the presentation, Brad, or can I move it to the committee?
No, I don't have anything further to add. So, but Andrea and I are here if there's questions from committee.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I'll open up to the committee. Member Dunlop, if you could speak.
Thank you, through the chair, whoever answered these questions. Thank you for the comments from the residents. It's a little alarming to hear what's all going on there that we didn't know about. First of all, the fill bylaw, did they not conform to that? Tree cutting, they have to go through the county to tree cut. Now we understand there's a well on the property. Is it an open well that is leaching into other wells neighboring, or has it been closed off properly? They have to do it through laws. And is there any fire retention on the property now? Or is that something, maybe Brad could answer me, that if this ever did get passed, that it would have to be there? And it just seems like this is a really good thing to bring forward, to get everything that's there properly done and protect the residents around them.
Okay, I'll let Brad respond if he wishes there, and then I'll ask Andrea and then Member Brennan. Go ahead, Brad.
Oh, thank you, Chair Taylor. I think Andrea, Ms. Woodrow wanted to respond to Member Dunlop's question.
Yeah, go ahead, Andrea.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. Through you to Member Dunlop. Certainly, Member Dunlop, we acknowledge that there are a lot of matters pertaining to the land uses that are occurring on this property. The applicant has submitted a large volume of studies that will be peer reviewed. And we wanted to have the public meeting today to ensure that the public comments and the committee's comments could also be contemplated by our peer reviewers as part of this process. So this meeting is very important for that purpose. And so there are lots of matters that have to be addressed. The site will be looked at comprehensively. We won't be looking at it piecemeal. The site has to work as an entire parcel. And all of the permitted uses have to be properly identified and accounted for through that process. So it's early on in the process. These are important comments, and we thank everyone who makes comments today, and we're acknowledging those, and we'll be working with Ms. Tamayo and her team and her client moving forward as well.
Thank you. Member Brennan.
Just supplementary, just one question. Was there, when they brought all this fill in, was there a fill bylaw? How do we know, and if there was, do we know where the fill came from?
Go ahead, Andrea.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. Through you to Member Dunlop. Yes, according to our records, there was a fill permit application for interim fill placement on that property back in 2016, I believe, prior to most of us being with the township at that time. But according to the records, there was proper certifications and deposits taken, and the deposit was returned subsequently based on a satisfactory inspection. But through the process of this land use planning application, matters such as lot grading, stormwater management, etc., have to be looked at appropriately and based on today's standards, and make sure that there are no negative impacts to adjoining properties, or in this case, MTO will also be looking very carefully at this site, given it's on their Highway 11 South right of way.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrea. Member Brennan.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, wow, this application is something else as far as I'm concerned. I stand concerned still with the I realize that the zoned use is what it is, but when you are adjacent as a company to residential areas, a little respect and regard for them is in order. And I really fear that they have set a bad precedent here. If everything I'm hearing is true, all these studies have been done, and yet we have all these members of the public that are quite concerned, and legitimately so, with not one, not two, but 3, 4, 5 issues. That's not the kind of progressive company you want to see if you're going to do that. So I really think, you know, there should have been some dialogue with the neighbors, a little more respect about all kinds of items. And there's a lack of trust here, and you know, you put it on yourself. The gravel washing into the ditches is a significant concern for me, particularly if there's any idea that we are polluting Lake Couchiching. That's not on, and I'm hoping these studies verify that. The noise issue, I mean, my God, that should have been addressed even without changing the business practices here. A little respect for people is in order. People live in that neighborhood. So, you know, if you've got noise coming so early in the morning that people can't even get a decent sleep, I have serious concerns with that. The use of Division Road is a concern. I've been on the site, by the way, not because of this particular application. I was on it a few years ago as a part of my campaign to run for council. So I have a fairly good idea what it looked like up close a few years ago. And I can see why people might have some concerns. So there's all these other uses that our planning staff have identified as beyond what is requested. That's a concern, and definitely I agree it needs to be addressed. Tires. MOE issues a permit. I'm sure there are ample conditions on the storage of tires, but I know what a tire fire can do. We have had disastrous fires. You don't have to go outside of Ontario. Hamilton's fire was terrible. A tire fire can destroy so many things. The smoke would be a hazard across a major highway. I would have to be assured that we are not going to have the toxics from melting tires go into any of the areas that need to be protected. And it is very difficult to put out a tire fire with any speed. Millions have been spent putting out tire fires in Ontario, and they don't get put out in a day. So I would like to know, is Severn or is MTO, are we ready for that eventuality? How are we going to deal with it? How are we going to make sure that if there is one, we don't pollute the waterways that are so important to the people in the community? So I was concerned about the fill, but I think Deputy Mayor Jane Dunlop has asked those questions, and we've had an answer on the certification. But, if you want to have a business like that, you need to be a good neighbor. And I am very concerned that this application falls. I just cannot believe that more discussions and more respect for the neighbors hasn't been demonstrated to assure us that at a site plan stage, that their things would be done properly. That's just my comments for now.
Thank you, Member Brennan. Member Cox.
Thank you. Through the chair, I totally agree with Member Brennan. His concerns are ones that I can relate to, and I totally agree with. I have a question. I don't know if it's through to Karla or to Andrea, but could you explain to me what a phase 1 environmental assessment is and what it covers?
If Andrea could speak to that.
Thank you, Taylor. I think I can start, and then if Ms. Tamayo would like to add anything that she sees fit as well. So basically, the phase 1 looks at records about historic uses of the property, air photographs, that sort of thing. And then based upon the findings of the phase 1, a phase 2 can be recommended, which then involves more, I guess, in-depth analysis on site in terms of site investigation, soil analysis, that sort of thing.
If Ms. Tamayo, would you like to comment more to that?
Sure. Yeah. Just as Andrea mentioned, the phase 1 looks at the background information. So it identifies areas of potential concern that would then be looked into further through the phase 2. So the phase 2 is where the testing is actually completed on the soil and the water. And it's through those results that would be able to confirm whether or not there is potential contamination on the property. And I just wanted to clarify, because we did read through the comments, and there was a question about why one of the residents haven't heard back about their well being tested. And that is because it's part of the phase 2 investigation. So the phase 1 has been submitted. The phase 2, we're refining the scope of work for that, but their well would be tested as part of the phase 2.
So supplemental, so phase 2 will happen.
The phase 1 did recommend a phase 2 investigation. As many of you know, there has been a lot of historical, commercial uses on this property, industrial uses. So the phase 1 looked at all those uses and found, potential areas of concern that would have to be looked at and investigated in phase 2 stage.
And so if we get a phase 2, we can have that peer reviewed too?
I'll defer that to Andrea.
Go ahead, Andrea.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. Through you to Member Cox. Certainly, any recommendations that come out of the studies that have been submitted to date, including the phase 2, will be peer reviewed. And peer reviewers may also require additional information and/or studies as part of their pending review.
Okay, and my next question, and I'd like clarification so that everyone who's listening can understand too. What is involved in the noise vibration study compatibility? Because compatibility with what's the noises I'm hearing is that's not compatible to the residential areas around it.
Go ahead, Andrea.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. Through you to Member Cox. So the land use compatibility study would look at things, as you've noted, such as noise and whether or not, say, outdoor processing may require some type of noise mitigation, such as fencing or enclosure, that type of thing. Dust, vibration mitigation, all those types of things. So that's certainly a preliminary land use compatibility study has been submitted. Our peer reviewers have been circulated a copy of that. They're just awaiting further comments from today before they complete their review.
Okay, and my other one was the trees that have been cut down without any compliance to any rules. What is going to happen with that? Is that something we look at and say, you need to replace those mature trees? We need to have some type of a tree buffer there, because obviously now we've got erosion, we have things flowing into ditches, we have major issues there, and that's a concern to me. So I would hope that something would be looked at by this owner who hasn't complied to many things, that he might do something with that also. And then my other last one is, I totally agree about the fire concern. That is scary. That is something that we definitely need to have a lot of work done and looked at. And I agree with Sherry Moore that this has to be looked at, as Andrea said, as a whole, because there are so many non-compliant issues with this property. And I personally, right now, if I had to vote on this now, I would not vote for it, because things have been done in the not public way. And it is not fair to the residents living around here. And it's not fair to our township or the environment.
Thank you, Member Cox. Just a question to Andrea there. Andrea, could you answer the question about what can be done about the trees that have been taken away? Just to speak for you there. Go ahead.
Certainly, Chair Taylor, in response to your question and Member Cox's question, although the tree clearing was not technically a trigger for the County of Simcoe tree conservation bylaw due to the size of the property and the size of the wooded area, it did create some drainage concerns due to the topography on the site. So as noted, some interim control measures have been put into place while the applicant prepared their studies and prepared the application and retained Ms. Tamayo and her company. So certainly we can look at such measures as additional landscaping and buffering to be re-implemented through the zoning and the site plan process based upon the recommendations of our peer reviewers.
Okay, and back to Member Cox.
Sorry, just supplemental. Is that something that we would bring Severn Sound in to help us with?
If I may, through you, Chair Taylor, to Member Cox, certainly Severn Sound is always one of the agencies we circulate, mostly for the municipal drinking water source protection. In this particular case, this is not a settlement area on full municipal services. However, we still would enlist Severn Sound to assist us with, environmental review. They also provide a stormwater management review from an environmental perspective, and they are doing that for us on other files as well.
And sorry, Andrea, and also we have Silver Creek down there. Like, we have a lot of water issues that they have been monitoring for us too in that area, like above that area. So I think maybe that's something that they should look at, the ditches and the monitoring of that water, especially if it's heading into Lake Couchiching. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Burkett.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. Karla, can you go to page 10 on that presentation? I just want to flag where sorry, I can't hear you, Karla.
Yeah, you're on mute, Karla.
Sorry, yes, let me just share my screen one more time for you.
So did you actually visit the site, Karla? Were you there?
I have, yes.
Okay, perfect. So if you were down into the west corner along Division Road.
So you're looking, this is the side that you're looking for?
You know what, it's the one that we have in our agenda as page 10. It actually shows it, I guess it's a satellite image. Can't bring that up, can you? Satellite image on page 10.
I can bring up the staff report. Yeah, give me 1 second.
Thank you. Keep going, or keep going. Page 10, next page.
Okay, I've cut it off there. Okay. Sorry.
So
I have the image that I could bring up if you'd like.
Thank you,
Brad.
Just for the benefit of council as well as you, Karla, the imagery that you show here is incorrect. So what they've done, if you go down to Division Road in the west corner, just come up a bit, right? Okay, a bit more, right on the property, right? Past their road, right there. So they've taken and cut all those trees, I think, back to the red line. So now what we're seeing is the erosion that's been talked about by Member Cox. Okay. I would hope as part of the study and the peer review, if we're going to come back, I would like to see what they're going to do to mitigate that. How are they going to fix the area that they have taken away? My other concern, Karla, so that they're aware, the brown water that's leaching into the ditch, is that going to be part of the study that they've done?
Sorry, so are you speaking to the testing of the water through the phase
Yes.
two
So the
investigation?
water that's running, what I'd like to see also as part of the study is the brown water that's leaching into this ditch. So this ditch runs down into a larger ditch that runs down into Lake Couchiching, as some members have stated.
Yep.
So I would also like to see what this brown water is. Also, the amount of soil, the 200 or 300 loads that were placed in here, and I'm not sure what is it a environmental study 2 does. Like, I don't know how far down they drill, but I'd be curious to know, as well as that, as part of that report, I'd like to know the depth that they're drilling. This is a very, very old site. It's been here for, I want to say 70, 80 years, and different operations have been carried on this site. And I have some grave concerns, but I'm looking forward to what the peer review team are going to say, as well as the study, so that I can read just some comments. Not looking for an answer, but I would like to know what they try. Are they their recommendations for what they've taken out? How are they going to mitigate the trees that they have taken out, as Member Cox has said? And if they're not going to replant trees, what are they going to do for soundproofing? Because what they now have done is the noise that's coming off that hill has been exposed to all the residents that live along Division Road.
Yeah, I think I'll just jump in. Andrea commented a bit on that, Andrea, but what about not only erosion, and what about buffering the sound and stuff with the lack of trees there? And then I'll let Member Dunlop speak.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. In response to your question, so certainly through the approvals process, we would be looking at a standard requirement is landscaping, for example. However, in this particular case, given the adjacent land uses, there may need supplemental landscaping, fencing, that sort of thing. That's what we'll be looking to our peer reviews who are qualified in this area to provide recommendation to the township on, to ensure that appropriate buffering and mitigation measures are put in place. I think Ms. Tamayo also wanted to add something as well to that.
Okay, go ahead there, Ms. Tamayo.
Through you, Chair Taylor. No, Andrew, yeah, you pretty much covered it. You know, enhanced landscaping, those were recommended mitigation measures that came out of the land use compatibility study. But as Andrew mentioned, that is under peer review currently, but those would be the type of measures that were recommended, and we'd be looking to implement should the application be approved and we go forward to site plan control.
Okay, thank you. Member Dunlop.
Through the chair. So I brought this tree cutting up in my opening comments. I know we've had clear cutting before because we don't have a tree cutting bylaw that needs to be put in place. But I know the one person that did the clear cut, they had to hire a landscape planner and put those trees or shrubs back in. As we go forward, the lot grading, the fire suppression, everything we've talked about, let's just say right now, I'm not in favor of any of this being approved, but so I'm just being the advocate, if it was never approved, are these all these complaints that we brought forward today or comments, are they going to be rectified and put in place? Because obviously this is a horrible thing that's happening to neighbors, and not only neighbors, to our water source right out into the lakes. Are we going to make sure lot grading and landscape and fences and everything are going to be put in place? Who can answer that for me?
I think we'll ask Andrea there, please.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. In response to Member Dunlop's question through you, so certainly we're at the process right now where the application is at the zoning bylaw amendment stage. So this is at the stage where we look at the principle of land use, and based on the official plan designation and the proposed land uses, Are the uses appropriate, and can they be introduced in a manner that's respective of the surrounding land uses, while also recognizing that this is a site designated for employment uses. So it's a very sensitive balance to try to achieve. However, if you can get to a point as the committee where you're comfortable with the zoning, then we would begin to talk about the more detailed landscaping, lot grading, stormwater management, that sort of thing. At this point in time, however, the applicant has submitted studies that would typically be required as part of site plan approval. So we have the benefit of looking at them early on in the process for a comprehensive review of the development. So that was something that was agreed to the pre-consultation meeting, and our peer reviewers will benefit from that additional information. We'll all benefit from that additional information at the zoning level.
Okay, so supplemented, I don't think I got my question answered. If this is not approved, are all those concerns that have been brought forward by committee and residents, are they going to be looked at and brought up to standards?
If I may, through you, Chair Taylor, to Member Dunlop, certainly, you know, the application, should it not be approved, then we would work with the landowner to either amend the application such that the land uses would be reduced in nature or changed in nature. And then if the application cannot be amended, then we would just have to determine next steps and compliance at that point in time. Right now, we are working through a process where we, you know, we call it compliance through cooperation. We've had cooperation from the landowner and their consultants through this process. They've implemented the interim lot grading and stormwater management that we asked them to do. So they are cooperating, and we will continue to work with them and keep this committee and members of the public apprised of the situation and the application.
So my last supplemental, but then we've got all the rest, noise, dust, and it goes on and on. So I just want to make sure that all this is looked after in the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Brennan, please speak.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. My supplementary question is, I would like to know more before I agree to any zoning change. Because once you agree, as I understand it, and yes, I'm new at this, but as I understand it, once you agree to a zoning change, then the next thing is you go to the site plan detail end of things. So basically, you're moving forward on something that I have way too many questions on right now to even think about moving forward. I was just wondering if Andrea could help me address this. I'm definitely not comfortable with saying yes to anything at this time in any fashion.
Okay, Andrea, please.
Thank you, Chair Taylor, through you to Member Brennan. So certainly committee is not being asked to make a decision today. This public meeting, the entire purpose of it was to gain a better understanding of comments and concerns from the committee members, from township departments, and from neighbors and other members of the public. Ministry of Transportation as a commenting agency. All of these comments have to go to our peer reviewers who specialize in matters, particularly land use compatibility and environmental issues, before you'll be asked to make any further decisions. So this is the information gathering stage right now. These questions and comments are critical for us to move forward and to be able to make a recommendation to you as to whether or not the land uses are appropriate for this site.
Thank you.
Thank you. If the committee hasn't got any questions, I've got a couple of questions and comments. So Andrea, 8092 and 8098, are they owned by the same owner, and are they subject to review as well? They were mentioned in a few correspondences here.
If I may, through you, Chair Taylor, in response to your comment, that actually is an outstanding comment from the Ministry of Transportation as well. And we've left that with Ms. Tamayo and her team to get back to us on, you know, the status of those properties and whether or not they form an integral part of this site. So that is certainly with them right now for a response.
Okay, then I read in there that that this will not be a salvage yard or a scrap yard for vehicles. Is that correct?
Yes, Chair Taylor, in response to your question, a salvage yard is not currently being sought as an additional permitted use on this site.
So, and then the other comment I got is the definition of 300 cubic meters. like that's a volume measurement. So what are the dimensions? How high can these tires go? And I don't know how high you can pile 5,000 tires. So is there a limit that you can go there? And are the tires covered? So that's one question. I got a couple more comments too.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. In response to your question, I think this is probably a good time just to clarify. So the 5,000 passenger tire equivalents, or 300 cubic meters, is proposed as the upper limit on this property, should this be deemed to be an appropriate land use. And the reason that Ms. Tamayo and her client and the township have requested that there be this upper limit in place is because we have spoken with the Ministry of Environment. Any number of tires greater than that amount requires a special approval under the Environmental Protection Act. It's called an environmental compliance approval, which would basically take this property into a full, I guess you could say, industrial category of land use. So that is why we've asked to put the upper limit in, so that this does not cross that threshold into requiring that additional approval from the Ministry of the Environment at this point in time. So that's why the property is proposed to continue to be in a special commercial zone with that upper limit in place, because it would not then be an industrial use under the Environmental Protection Act.
But to my question, how high is 300 cubic meters? I know it's, you know, the length times width times height. So how high can you go on these things?
If I may, Chair Taylor, Ms. Tamayo, I'm not sure if you have a visual representation that you might be able to explain. I'm not as good with volumes myself.
Yeah, through you, Chair Taylor. I do not have a visual representation. You know, I've read through the Ontario regulation. I believe it was 225-18 that's regarding tires under the Resource Recovery and Productivity Act, and it doesn't define how the tires should be stored, to what height max. It doesn't define those measurements. So you know, we could work with township staff to try and determine, you know, if there should be a maximum height for such storage. Currently, they're as noted in my presentation, they're just being stored on tires or on trailers, and then when they go through sorting, then they pile them, sort them accordingly, put them on the trailers, and then truck them out.
Yeah, I just found them. A volume measurement doesn't tell me the actual dimensions. I found it odd there. I've just got a couple more things, and I'll let Member Burkett speak. But some concerns came up for me. Being a little older there, I remember Hagersville 1990 had a serious fire back there, and that was very bad. And we have issues like with the environment, noise, dust, tree cutting, and Member Brennan hit on the head. Good neighbors. It doesn't look like this outfit is being kind to the neighbors there. So I think this is way too early in this procedure, and take our time and proceed cautiously. Member Burkett.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. So yes, you're right. There's many businesses that are utilizing this piece of property other than just the tires. But I think the tires, to your comment, from what I've seen as I drive by, they've contained them in those cement huge blocks. So I think what they've done is try and contain them in those areas. And I think they're a certain size. I don't know what the height is. It looks like they may be 3 or 4 high, so that if a fire did break out, it would only be contained to those blocks. But further to that, you mentioned something about, I think one of the residents, I think it was Sherry, mentioned something about the derelict vehicles and trailers that are on the property. If they're not plated, are they able to stay there? And maybe that's why, and I had a couple of calls about a scrapyard. I'm just curious, Karla, if maybe you can inquire as to, are they plated, or are they storing them there, or what are they doing with them? And if so, maybe they should be hauled to a scrapyard, because there is quite an array of vehicles that are there.
Through you, Chair Taylor, to Member Burkett. So my understanding is that the vehicles that are there are they're associated with that motor vehicle repair garage or hobby garage use. I'm not aware of any other vehicles on site not being associated with that use, but we do have a meeting with township staff tomorrow to discuss, as I mentioned, after their site visit, some additional concerns and additional uses and to be able to work with township staff just through, through the zoning and seeing, what uses are occurring on site that are currently permitted and what uses might need to go into a revised zoning bylaw amendment application to bring those uses into conformity.
So supplementary through you, Mr. Chair, if I may, to Karla, I know that we have an application in Coldwater where someone wants to open up a motor vehicle inspection station and he needs permission from the township. The MTO is looking for permission from the township to be able to do that. And he's struggling with what needs to be done. So I'm curious, this may be grandfathered because it's been there so long. So I'm not looking for an answer now, but maybe when we do have our next meeting regarding this, I'm curious as to, did they need permission to do that repair facility with the MTO from us?
We can have that answer for you, Member Burkett. My understanding it's permitted under the zoning bylaw, but as to any correspondence or requirements with MTO, that we can look into.
Supplementary, if I may, through the chair. The only reason I'm asking is any business that is functioning on a provincial corridor, they require permission from the MTO. So I'm curious what documentation they have. If there's multiple businesses that are happening on that piece of property, have they got permission from the MTO?
Thank you. I think Member Cox had her sign up. Yep, go ahead, Member Cox. And you're on mute there.
Yeah. Sorry, through the chair to Karla. Karla, what Member Burkett said just twinged something for me. When you're doing this environmental impact assessment, are you over in that area? Because if those derelict vehicles have been sitting there, what types of fluids or anything could be leaking out of them? So we should be checking over in that area also, not just the one area. So we've covered those areas that there could be a concern that we may not have been aware of, but thinking about the fact that I do know that with scrapyards, those fluids have to be taken out because that is an issue. If they sit long and any brake lines or any lines leak, you could have an environmental impact. So if you could please check on that and make sure that's covered in your assessment also.
Yeah, just for clarification, through you, Chair Taylor, to Member Cox, the Phase 1 environmental site assessment looked at the whole of the site, and the Phase 2 will do the same.
Okay, thank you. But just to check that, please, thanks.
Okay, any other comments by the committee? Very good discussion. So I think I'll declare the public portion closed. And if
sorry, excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, Christine.
Sorry, I just wanted to add, I had made some comments earlier, but just through the discussion, I came up with a few more.
Sure.
I'm not exactly sure that attachment to the drawing that you had up to look at where the trees were cut down on Division Road. I'm not exactly sure if that's totally an updated photo. I know that in behind 8084, my sister's property, they have trailers parked right against the fence that they put up, and they did put up a chain link fence, but it doesn't stop the dust or anything. And like I said before, it's got barbed wire at the top. Not even sure if that's legal. And the barbed wire faces out. So they have actually, there were all trees behind there, and they've cleared all those trees as well and made that an open working area for these tires that are, my understanding is the tires are still kept in the trailer park, like as well as I guess in these concrete barriers. And then that leads me to the two properties that I think Mark was asking about, 8092, 8098. Are these incorporated into this property? They have trailers on the property there that never move. They are in a U shape and they block my sister's driveway. I challenge every single one of you to go up and try to get in her driveway safely, because these trailers block the entrance to her driveway. And because the asphalt doesn't go all the way over to the shoulder, you actually have to pull over onto the shoulder of the road where it's just gravel and try to get into her driveway. If you don't know where her driveway is, you've totally missed it because of these trailers sitting there and sitting over this well that's there as well. that we don't know if it's been decommissioned or what the status of the well is. And then my other question was, if these approvals don't go through for this site, what is the future of this property? And
just a quick question that Christine,
is there going to be any monitoring of the property? If the approval goes through, who's going to continuously monitor it? And if the approvals don't go through, what is the future of this property for the residents? And I think that was about it.
Yeah, Christine, I guess this will show up with our motion, but just for the committee, what's the address of your sister's property, just so, in case we want to check that out?
It's 8084 Highway 11 South. It's directly beside this property.
Okay, thank you. So, Andrea, could you answer Christine's comments about where do we go from here? What's the next step?
Thank you, Chair Taylor. Certainly I can. So we have a lot of great comments, questions, matters for further investigation and reporting back. So once these minutes are finalized from today, all of this information goes to our peer reviewers for further consideration. As Ms. Tamayo mentioned, we are also meeting with her and her team tomorrow so that we can begin to compile answers to these comments and questions and then report back, and then that will determine next steps. There's a lot of information here to be reviewed and peer reviews to be completed before we can really provide definitive next steps. So at this point, I can assure you, you'll hear back from us and we'll determine next steps through concurrence with the committee as to how they'd like to move forward with this.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Yeah, Member Dunlop.
Through the chair, just one final question. I'll go back to what Christine had said and what I'd asked. Are these outstanding concerns going to be corrected? Like, why is, or how are we allowing that company to have trailers that would block somebody's laneway? Can that be something, Andrea, that can be looked at immediately? I don't think that's something that we need to sit and wait on this to be decided yay or nay.
Okay, Andrea.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. Through you to Member Dunlop. Certainly, we will address this as early as tomorrow with Ms. Tamayo and her team.
Thank you so much, Andrea.
Okay, I think any other comments? I'm going to declare the public portion closed, and if Allison or Gray could read a motion, please.
Certainly. So the motion for today reads that planning report number P22-033 dated September 21st, 2022, with respect to a proposed zoning bylaw amendment, file number Z2207 for 8120 Highway 11 South be received. And further, that prior to the presentation of a draft zoning bylaw amendment and an associated planning report with recommendations from township staff to council, the following be completed. Peer reviews of the supporting studies as outlined in this planning report be undertaken by the township. Consideration of any comments received from council, the planning development committee, members of the public, circulated agencies and township departments in order to determine consistency with the provincial policy statement, PPS 2020, conformity with the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe 2020, the County of Simcoe's official plan and the township's official plan.
Okay, do we have a mover on that one, please? Moved by Member Cox, second by Member Dunlop. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you for a great discussion this morning. Okay, well, there's no delegations. Consent agenda. Does anyone have any comments on the consent agenda? I see none. Then I'll ask for a motion for approval of the regular agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The motion reads that the agenda be adopted, including consent items as circulated.
If you have a mover for that, please. Moved by Member McIntyre, second by Member Stevens. All in favor? That's carried. We have no reports from officials, no new business, no closed session, so I'll ask for a motion for adjournment.
Thank you. Motion reads that this meeting be hereby adjourned at 10:52 a.m.
So we have a moved by Member Brennan, second by Member Stevens. All in favor? That's carried. Thanks, everyone, and hope you have a great day.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.